This is how you all know that I love you, because I show up with bedhead and bedbeard. It's not even 7 o'clock in the morning on Sunday the 26th, and I was sitting here going, "What am I going to do today?" And I said, "You know what? I'm not going to do a Patreon post today, and I'm not going to do a Monday Musings episode for tomorrow. So I should just do an end of the year stream. Stream? No. Video? Yes. I'm not going to do a stream. Kind of like Christmas is now. I mean, today technically is the 26th, so it's still kind of the last day of that holiday weekend before people head into like the first full week of Christmas vacation. I've got my Mando mug, and that coffee is hot. Oh yeah, probably got some biscuit crumbs in my beard. I definitely have biscuit crumbs on my sweater. You can tell hygiene's not high on my list of priorities this morning. Hello, everybody. I'm Tim Anderson, aka Redfill. Welcome. If you are a returning visitor, thanks so much for your subscription, for your support here on YouTube. Channel's been growing leaps and bounds the past few months, and it's just that regularity has finally been paying off since I decided to just start taking YouTube more seriously, because for a long time I didn't. So thank you everybody for making that a reality. And if you're new here, this video might freak you out and turn you off because it's a lot different than other stuff that's on my channel. Um, that may be good, it may be bad. Um, I've done a lot of variety stuff throughout the last couple of years, especially this year. If you look at this 2021, we started off doing lots of Lotro cooking videos along with Lord of the Rings Online. Then we transitioned to doing the Project Drammon stuff, which was what the Weave and the Void was called before it was the Weave and the Void, when we were code naming it. In between that was my Is It Worth It series of game review videos combined with um, the Mondays and MMORPGs, which I haven't done since I hit episode 50, and then Monday Musings, which is every Monday morning, and we've done 50 episodes throughout this year. So, um, and sometime towards the latter part of this year, I started doing book reviews because I got a Kindle Paperwhite finally. After years of my brother trying to get me to buy one, I finally went and did it. And then being inspired by Liam over at Liam's Lyceum to get back into reading, and then also start doing show reviews. Not a lot. I started with season 2 of Love, Death, and Robots, I think is what it's called, and then I went from that into the Wheel of Time. And I've been doing episodic reviews of the Wheel of Time, and I'm going to be doing this week a review of the second season of The Witcher. So I think moving forward into next year, this is gonna be a rambling video of me talking about things. So again, if you're new here, bear with it. And if you do like what you see, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, hit the bell icon, all that stuff. Leave a comment below. And if you're not new here and you're returning, you already know that I ramble. So let's just roll with that. I need more coffee. It's early on a Sunday morning. Um, what a group last night in EverQuest 2, right? Like, having a lot of fun there. Getting folks power leveled up. So I'm gonna keep doing all of those things in 2022. I'm also going to be trying to add a few more things to the YouTube channel. Um, I already did one. I did the first point and click adventure game, uh, point and click classics. Look back at some of the games that influenced me as I was growing up. Those point and click games that I really liked as I was a teenager. Into my basically all through my teenage years, because by the time I got to 1999, I was 19 years old. That's when EverQuest came out, and that's when I transitioned from single player games, RPGs, and point and clicks over to MMORPGs. And I still play a lot of RPGs, but I haven't really played any point and click games since then at all. Like I didn't play any of like the Siberia games, and there's a lot of point and click games I didn't play because I was too busy with MMOs. Um, So yeah, coming up in the new year on here on YouTube, I'll be doing the point and click game on top of everything else. I'll be doing more show reviews, more book reviews, and I'm gonna probably. I really like doing the Mondays in MMORPGs show. We did 3 seasons of that, covering MMORPGs. But I feel like I'm getting that outlet now with the guys from the Looking for More show. So I participate as one of the co-hosts on Simmerg's show on Thursday nights, the Looking for More podcast with him and Nathan Napalm, hosted on Simmerg's Twitch channel. Um, and as long as they're still happy to have me, I'm gonna keep going on that show every time. I like it. Those guys are great guys. I feel like we have a very good relationship. We're playing D&D together. It's one of those good relationships that just forms out of shared interests. And so I feel like I'm getting, the shared space to talk about MMORPGs and stuff on that show. So I don't know that I'm ever going to bring back the Mondays and MMORPGs here on my YouTube channel, but I do want to. I do want to keep talking about gaming from my own perspective, game development, game news, rants, so on and so forth. So I'll probably be doing some type of show, moving into the new year. I don't want to do it with a co-host because I already do that show with co-hosts. So that's a safe place for me to do that, and so this I can do this here on my own channel. Um, I do, sometimes I don't agree with all the things that he says, but I like the way that like Kira TV does things. Also, I like the Lazy Peon. These guys do some stuff that I appreciate, and I don't want to say that I want to try to mirror what those guys are doing, but everybody has a unique take on game development and stuff. And I feel like, even though I'm not actively developing an MMORPG anymore after 7 years of doing so, because my brother and I and Chris are working on a single player game now, along with tabletop and other stuff, I still am intimately involved in MMORPGs and development, and obviously, we're playing EverQuest 2 right now, and we're looking forward to Pantheon and other games. So I'll probably be doing some sort of a show in the new year. I don't know what it's going to be yet. And it may not even be a show per se. I might just start doing episodes once or twice a week on whatever is going on in gaming, whatever's newsworthy, and just rant and talk about stuff. I don't really care about the NFT stuff. Like I know some people like Kira TV covers a lot of cryptocurrency and NFT games, and I don't care about that. But I do think it's worthwhile to look at a lot of the indie projects that are springing up, and just game development in general, and lots of cool games that are coming out. And there's a lot I want to talk about in terms of MMORPGs failing and why they've failed, because I do have some insight into that from a developer standpoint as opposed to just a consumer standpoint. And I really like to look at, one of the ones that's really been heavy on my mind is, can a subscription game even make it in today's, and when I say that, I say, can a new IP make it as a subscription based game in the current era? Because I see veteran games falling left and right. Like Stride of the Avatar failed, Crowfall failed. Those weren't even really subscription-based games so much. So when I see games trying to talk about how they're going to be a subscription-based game in the new year, really? Because Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft are the only two subscription-based games that are thriving right now, and the only reason they're doing so is because they have massive franchises behind them with 30 years of history. Um, so I mean, I would love to talk about that more because I don't know what that's going to look like. I also there's just a glut of great entertainment. Like, I finally got an Xbox Series X for the holidays. Took me a year to find one. I would have loved to have gotten one last year, but I didn't pre-order when they came out because I didn't need to. There weren't any games on it that I cared about. But as we got deeper into the year, there was more stuff coming out. And as I've gotten that, I picked up the Ultimate Game Pass, which is like 16 bucks a month or 15 bucks a month, whatever it is. And I get games for the PC as well as games for the Xbox. So I'm paying the equivalent of a monthly subscription, right? For games that I can play on two devices, a huge catalog of free games. So it's like just yesterday, I downloaded Marvel's Avengers, Mist, Outer Worlds, MLB 21. Shit, I forget. There were I think 7 games in total that I downloaded yesterday. um, just on the Xbox, and then there's more stuff I can get for the PC. So when I look at the value of $15 a month, the Game Pass offers exponentially way more than you're ever going to get from an MMORPG. Now, that's not to say I don't subscribe to MMORPGs. I still do. I'm running 2 subscriptions for EverQuest 2 right now on top of a subscription to Star Wars Old Republic. The Star Wars Old Republic one switches every year because when I play my winter gaming session with my brother, that's either Star Wars Old Republic or Lord of the Rings Online. Traditionally, those are the 2 games that we have played every winter for like the last, I think since like 2010. So 10, 11 years now we've been doing that. I think we may have missed a winter or 2 in there somewhere, but for the most part, especially since we started working together on game development in 2014, I don't think we've missed a year since 2014. So I still pay monthly subscriptions, but it's only to franchises I know and love. I don't go out there and subscribe to new IPs. I won't. I flat out won't because they're not going to be able to offer me the value of what I get from existing intellectual properties that have an established history. And this sounds weird knowing that I was developing a game that in the beginning I was very hardcore in favor of subscriptions. And as time went on, I started to say, I don't actually think a subscription only model is the way to go anymore. I think you have to look at hybrid models, and there are lots of different ways to do things now. But when I look at the value of what Games Pass is offering for the average consumer, why would anyone in their right mind want to go out there and pay a box price on top of a subscription cost for a new MMORPG that's only going to. Because here's the thing, every game that comes out, it doesn't matter what it is. It's New World, Crowfall, the honeymoon period is very short these days, 2, 3 weeks, and then people are off to the next thing. So if you can't even keep them around for 2 to 3 weeks in a free to play game or a buy to play game, etc., box, whatever. If you can't even keep people going beyond 2 to 3 weeks in those types of games, what makes you think that you're going to be able to get people to pay for your game and then pay a monthly subscription on top of that and stick around? Um, any company, well, it's just regardless. And people can argue that New World, well, it wasn't a great game. That's why. That's not true. We can look at the data, and the data shows that people have a very short honeymoon period anymore. And that's not because these games aren't necessarily good. It's because there's so much to do. There's so much to play. Like, I am not going to be bound. I like to play video games. Um, EverQuest 2 is not the only thing I play. Yes, I'm playing it a lot right now because that's the flavor of the season presently. And we have a good community going there. But I'm also playing Halo Infinity. I'm playing Star Wars: Old Republic. I'm playing point and click games. I'm reading books. I'm watching shows with Chris. Like, I'm doing lots of different things. Like, the idea that you're going to play one game and only one game and that's going to take up 60 hours every week, those types of players are very few and far between. People who only dedicate to one game. It's not the reality for most people these days. Most people, regardless of their PC or console, are playing lots of things. Everybody's got Steam. Everybody has Steam or GOG or Epic launchers. Yeah, maybe even have the stupid Unreal or the not Unreal, Origin, EA, whatever it's called these days. So, you know, everybody's got these launchers and they've got lots of different games. You get free games every single week. It's ridiculous. There's just tons of content. So yeah, I'm rambling now. Where was I at the very beginning? I was talking about new content coming to the channel, and then I started talking about, oh, I might do a gaming. So what you just heard me talk about, that's probably the type of stuff I would be talking about in a new gaming show, would be that type of stuff, just ranting about that. Let's move on to other stuff, shall we? I'm going to try to write more in 2022. And that sounds weird because everybody knows that I write a lot. But what I do is very much it, even 2021 was sporadic in the sense that the only schedule that I kept throughout the year was every Monday having a Monday's Musings episode come out, and then 3 updates a week for the Patreon page, and then 2 chapters every month for the book on Patreon. From a writing perspective, the way I'm doing the Weave in the Void book is very laid back, and it's very easy for me to come in and bang out a chapter in 1 or 2 days. 1 or 2 sessions is all it takes me to do a chapter. Now, those are not highly polished chapters. The way they're going up on Patreon, they've only had a very rough edit pass. We've not done any revisions or anything like that. There's probably still some grammar errors in there. Um, I consider what I'm publishing on Patreon to be the rough draft of that first book. When I get the 50 chapters there, I will then take that, do a revision pass, probably rearrange chapters a little bit here and there, and then that will become, after that goes through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 revisions with beta readers and so on and so forth, that will eventually get published as a traditional self-published book. We'll do it self-published, at least that's the current plan, and put it out on Amazon as a paperback, hardback, and Kindle for the supporters who want to get it in that format beyond the way they've been reading it. And of course, everyone who's a patron subscriber gets a free copy of the Kindle version of that when it's finally available. But because I'm writing that in a 2 times a month format, that means I'm only really dedicating 4 sessions a month, maybe 5 sometimes when you count the editing in. Let's say half a dozen at most in a given month. So I still have another 20 days, let's say, another 20 days a month where I'm writing other things. And some of that is the tabletop book, the source book and the first module. And then I've also been doing incarnate maps, and we're going to be starting miniature painting in the new year. And all that sounds like a lot, but when you really break it down, it's just a matter of scheduling. And that was something that Cris and I said we needed to do this week coming up, this last week of this year, is actually start to look at our production schedule. Because what we didn't need and we didn't do in 2021, we didn't need a content calendar for the Weave and the Void. So we didn't need to worry about, other than the 3 posts a week, that was the only thing. 3 posts a week and 2 chapters plus 2 pieces of artwork. Everything else we did was just whenever we had time. But now that we're adding so many other things to the table with the Weave and the Void, we're actually looking at a content calendar. And on top of that is there's 2 projects in particular that I want to keep, that I need to finish and work on, which are not related to the Weave and the Void. So right before we did the Weave and the Void, end of 2020 and beginning of 2021, I started work on a science fiction novel, and I got about halfway through with it, maybe about 60%. And I really do want to finish that because I've never published I've never had a book published in a traditional format. I have self-published everything since 2011 when I first got into just working online full time. I started off as a writer in 2008. I shouldn't say full time because I was working full time as of 2009. 2008 was when I started my writing career, and by 2009 I was full time. What I mean by that is I started my own blog with Marginal Boundaries in 2000, at the end of 2010 into 2011, and oh, actually, come to think of it, my first book wasn't until 2012 because I went to Columbia in 2011, and I launched Marginal Boundaries at the end of 2011. So beginning of 2012 was when I started self-publishing books, and it was all travel stuff because that's what I was doing at the time. I wasn't into game development until 2014. So 12, 13, into 14 was when I did like 7 or 8 books, I don't even remember now, that were all travel related. I had the expat guidebook. I had guidebooks for Cancun, Mexico, Sofia, Bulgaria, and Bogota, Colombia, the 3 places I had lived. Then I did Beyond Borders after my brother's suicide. And then I did there was a travel blogging book that I did in there, a couple of other projects for other people. Um, and so I've always ever just self-published. And then when we started doing the Saga of Leucemia, the reason I just self-published that was because the traditional publishing route takes years. You have to find an agent. The agent has to sell your book. The book has to go through revisions. It could be 3, 4 years before 3 to 4 years between the time that you submit your book, or I should say 3 to 4 years between the time that you finish the book and actually get that first book out. That is somewhat the cycle. Could be as short as a year if you're very lucky, but traditionally you're going to say between 2 and 4 years is what it can take. And we didn't want to wait for that because of the audience we were building in Saga Lucimi, so I just decided to self-publish that one anyway because I was familiar with it and already done it that way. And we planned on doing Weaving the Void that way because I've done it before. I know how to do it. I know how to build up an audience. I know how to self-publish it. I'm always in favor of self-publishing because you only lose out on the income. It's the cost of doing business with like Amazon. So you give them their cut for using their platform as a print on demand or Kindle service, and I'm fine with that. Um, but there is still a part of me in the back of my mind that goes, I would love to see if I can do something through the traditional publishing route. And so I started this science fiction book as a experiment in that um, arena because I don't care about that book in the sense that that science fiction novel is a standalone experiment that I'm writing as a potential part of it. It's a potential two-book series, but it's written as a standalone. It has a young female protagonist because I had a lot of fun writing Amelia in Echoes of the Past. So I wanted to do that. And this is before I went and read Sanderson, and he had young female protagonists and Mistborn and everything. And then I was like, well, at least I know that that works. So I can finish that idea. So that's one of the things I need to finish in 2022 is I need to finish that manuscript, get it edited, get it through the beta readers, and get it prepped for submission to agents. I would like to say that I could have that ready by the end of next year. Like it would be it's kind of like a personal goal is to see if I can't have that finished sometime in the spring to summer in terms of revisions and everything else, and then by the fall maybe have it ready to start going out to agents and just when I say I don't care about that, is what I mean by that is I don't have a timeline for that. It doesn't need to come out. I'm not on a schedule. I don't have a Patreon associated with it. There's not expectations from readers. We haven't made any commitments or promises to anybody. It's just a thing that I'm doing for me. And whenever it's ready, I can start that process. So that would be something I would like to see if I can do that and just get something out there traditionally published. And I don't care if it's through a small press or a big press. I really don't care. I just would like to do that so that I can say that I've done it on a personal level with a science fiction and fantasy novel, as opposed to only ever having done stuff with in the travel space and or self-published. Um, we shall see. That's one of the things I need to do. And the second is, which may happen this year. It depends on schedules. The other thing would be finishing the second book in the Saga of Leucemia, which is it's. I keep forgetting where I'm at in it. I'm like 60,000 words in or something. I mean, I've got a chunk in it, but I'm only like 25% of the way when you consider that I'm shooting for like 200,000 word novels at that point. But in order to do all of that, I have to actually set a schedule and just stick to it and say, no excuses. As much as I want to just lay around and watch Netflix for 6 hours, I need to limit myself to maybe say one episode of a show per day on Netflix and make sure that I'm hitting all of these other objectives. This goes back to what I said about in the Monday Musings episode 50, where I was kind of waxing on about limited time, considering I'm in my early 40s now. There's things that I want to get done and accomplished, and so I need to make sure that I do that. And the only way to do that is to set a schedule, otherwise I get sidetracked. And next thing I know, I've been playing EverQuest for 6 hours, and I really don't need to play EverQuest 2 for 6 hours. Like it's great to do it the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights when I'm doing it with the guild and everything else. But apart from that, I do need to start to limit my gaming and my shows a little bit in 2022 so that we could be a little bit more productive with other projects. Um, because through all of this, I still have a day job, and if I didn't have a day job and all I was able to do was write full time, I wouldn't be talking about it in this way. But I still have a day job, like many people out there, and so I have to be um, conscious of how I'm spending my free time and making sure that I'm, enjoying that free time, but also being as productive as possible with the things that I'm working on. So, um, I expect 2022 to be the most productive year we've had yet, assuming, knock on wood, assuming there's no disasters or other things. Um, Day job looks like it's going good. Um, there are some, we've got lots of irons in that fire. We just hired well, I don't think we've actually hired them yet, but we've done a bunch of interviews. We're hiring an editorial director. Moving into the new year, we're also hiring a social engine keyword person to come on and work with Google ads and YouTube ads and stuff. So that company is growing and it's very I'm in a good place with them. I've been there since the beginning. Um, when it was just my two friends. They were about a year into it when they came and asked if I knew anybody who could do social media for them, and I said, I don't know anybody. What are your needs right now? And when they explained it to me, I was like, I can totally do that for you because it's a very low time commitment at the time. And then that just it progressed from me being a consultant to then being a part-time social media manager for them to coming on full-time at the beginning of this year. And that was just timing because when things went the way they did with Saga of Leucemia, I was like, well, I guess I could go find another job in game development, if I want to, or I could start a new project. What do I want to do? And then they happened to be in a position where it was like, oh, you're no longer working on that full time. Do you want to come do this full time? And that was it worked out because I was like, hey, this happened. I don't know what we're doing, where we're at schedule wise, but let's talk, and it worked out. So if I didn't have a day job, I could write a lot more. And I've talked about this with like Liam and stuff about like Brandon Sanderson putting out like 8,000 words a day. Is that possible? Oh yeah, I do more than 8,000 words a day, easy. But it's not on one project because I'm talking emails, blog posts, social media posts, YouTube scripts, the work that I do on the chapters that I work on, and all the tabletop stuff and the source book. I easily do 8 to 10,000 words a day, but it's spread out across lots of different things. So if you're only ever working full time on one thing, sure, but I still have a day job that's not related to this. So yeah, contemplation. Oh, Saga Lucemia stuff. I can talk a little bit more about the book stuff. I'm still 90% sure what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna revamp that entire first book. So here's a little backstory for those of you who are curious about things. Um, I still own. It's all mine. It's always been mine since I created that in 1999, and that didn't start as an MMORPG project until 2014. Stormhaven Studios has the rights to make an MMORPG based on that. And they chose to go a different route after they did what they did with my brother and I. They chose to, and there's litigation on that that'll be going on for years. I don't want that name is tainted now, not because of me, because of what they did and what they chose to do. So that name is tainted, and so there are a lot of people who and I won't say anything public about it because legal reasons. Um, but that name has become tainted because of the way that they did things and their decision to just throw it out the window and screw a whole bunch of people out of pre-orders and everything else. Um, people who have signed books and maps and all this stuff that they bought thinking that they were buying collector's editions to an MMORPG and then being told that, sorry, we're changing the name and that's a them thing, not a me thing, because they have the rights to make that MMORPG. Um, so I'm not going to continue publishing those books under the Saga of Lucimian name. That'll get revamped. I've made that decision as of last year. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to completely revamp that first book, change the names. It's essentially I'll just rework it, um, and we'll have the same characters and the same story and everything, but we're going to be changing a lot of the names, and I'll probably be fleshing things out even a bit more, and thinking about maybe splitting things up. I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do with that yet, but that's gonna start to happen in 2022. Probably towards the latter part of the year because I want to get the science fiction novel done first. Um, but once that happens, that's going to become my big personal project. Because I do have all of the world building and lore and everything else all the way back to 1999, and I do want to finish that series. And I know I have great fans out there who loved that first book and want to finish that series, and I owe it to them as well as myself, just because that was the first project I ever started. Like that was the first big, apart from the short stories that I was selling and everything else, that was the first book series that I attempted to write. And so I want to finish that. Um, and I'm not, I am going to pat myself a little bit on the back here, but it's a good book. That first book was a really good book, and yeah, I didn't have a professional editor, so there's grammar errors here and there, and it definitely could have used an editor, but it had great reviews. We sold quite a few copies, and everybody enjoyed it. And so I really want to finish it because I know that that was a good book and it's a good series and there's a lot of fun there. But it is going to get reworked to something else because I don't want it associated with the Saga Busime name because it is tainted now because of other people's actions. And so um, I will change that to something else whenever I get around to it, and we will call it something different and republish it um, um, as another thing. And I don't expect too many plot elements to change, but it might. I might completely change the main character to a female. You never know. But for the most part, that story is going to be there. Um, I feel like I can't change it to a female though now that I think about it because Darren being a young thief, if I did it as a young thiefess, a young girl thief, then it would be like a Mistborn ripoff because that's what she was a young thief. So I can't do that. In any case, those are a couple of the projects I'm going to be working on in 2022. Um, and if those of you who want to read it, you can. It's on Amazon. Echoes of the Past is still up as a Kindle. Um, I won't be doing the tabletop, or excuse me, I won't be doing a paperback version of that again because the paperback version that we sent out, I mean, most of those were signed copies, and there was a few that weren't. But um, I have to, if I want to do it paperback, I need to go get a new ISBN number and a bunch of other stuff, and there's just no reason to do that when I'm not actively promoting that book for sale. So Kindle only is where that's at. Um, and I still have the Donovan book that I want to write, which I did start um, like 2 years ago, and decided that I sat there and went, I don't know that I started having doubts about whether or not I could pull off a book with that character because he's always only ever been a short story character. You know, bounty hunter, spy, science fiction, just a fun character to work with. But it's always just been short stories, and so I started to work on a book, and then I was like, can I do this? Like it's starting to feel like I'm just writing a elongated short story, and I don't know that I can make it work without having there be parts of this book that are going to be slow and boring. And that's what I don't want for that character. I like that character being very fast paced, which I have never, despite the fact that I love the Witcher video games and I love the movies, the series, I should say, I've never read the Witcher books. And I know it's a collection of short stories put together into a book. And so I'm like, maybe I should just do Donovan like that. Like, just do a bunch of Donovan short stories, take like 10 Donovan short stories and put them into a book and have that be, the story of Jeffrey Donovan. Not the actor, who's a great actor, by the way. Burn Notice was a really fun show. And it's funny because I wrote the character of Jeffrey Donovan before Burn Notice was ever a thing, before I ever even knew about the character, or before I ever even knew about the actor Jeffrey Donovan. Um, my character has a different spelling on his name, though. Anyway, um, so I have lots of little projects I work on. And I talked about this in the last episode. I was like, if I ever get a chance to go full time um, on writing, I'll gladly embrace it. Um, but I've traditionally always held day jobs, and I like my day job. So it's like I don't want to get rid of my day job. It's a good gig. It keeps me in the travel space because the publication is a travel publication. It's more of a travel and exploration thing now. But like we just had The December Ethos of Exploration event we just did before Christmas holidays was um, Joel Sartori, which is he's behind the photo arc, which is like one of the biggest projects that National Geographic has. He's been working on that, I think 17 years. He's been working on the photo arc with National Geographic, and they've just given him a budget and they're just letting him do it. It's like this unlimited project that him and his family are working on. His son's helping him, and they go around the world to do all this amazing animal photography. And they're expecting it to be another 10, 15 years of work. So it's this legacy project for National Geographic. So to have, to be able to work with that caliber of people is one of the reasons I love my day job, because in the gaming space and in the development space, I'm still a relative, even though, yeah, I now have like 8 years of development underneath my belt on various projects, and I've founded 2 game studios. And you can find information about me at mmorpg.com, massively op, mmos.net, mmogames.net. I mean, I did thousands of interviews, I think, over the course of like 7 years. I'm still a small fish in the game development space, whereas I have a much bigger name in the travel industry, and I have the bulk of my work has been there, so I still like to keep my toes in there because it pays bills, and um, I like to travel. And unfortunately, with pandemic, you can't really travel, but well, I mean, you can, but I wouldn't want to travel right now. I'm not being political when I say this, but just I've been watching like all of the cancellations, all the flight cancellations that happened over um, this Christmas season with Omicron variant and everything else. I would not want to go through travel right now. Like, there's too many variables, and like I've got friends who are still trying really hard because everything they do is based off of traveling around the world full time, and they couldn't do anything for 2020. So 2021, once they got vaccinated, they started to try to get back out there. But there's just too many unknowns and too many issues with traveling right now, because you could go to a place and like get on a plane, and by the time you're there, they've got a new list of like banned countries or whatever, and you show up and they're telling you, oh no, you actually can't just come straight in. You need to quarantine for 2 weeks because you just came from this country that we have deemed to be a red country, a red threat level. And so now you've got to quarantine for 2 weeks. And it's like the idea of going to a destination for, say, because every time Chris and I have gone somewhere, we try to go for 3 months. That way you've got 3 months on location. We used to call this immersion travel. That was the big thing. That was the selling point of all my guides back in the day, was immersion travel. We're going to teach you how to immerse yourself in the culture, immerse yourself in the country. It's all about picking a city, or picking like 3 cities and getting an Airbnb there, and you just hunker down for a minimum of 1 to 3 months in that location. If you do three, great, but try to do one, or try to do one. So you pick a hub, and then you just spend 3 months exploring everything within like 2 to 3 hours of that location, and just covering that content for your blog and YouTube channel and Instagram and everything else. To have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine where you can't do anything is just ridiculous to me. Not only that, it's not just about the fact that you have to be locked down for 2 weeks, it's the cost associated with quarantine, because they're making you choose specific hotels when you arrive for most of these countries that do it like that. And so you don't get to go pick the cheapest place. You have to pick a place that they approve of. And these quarantine hotels are charging an outrageous amount of money. It's costing people several $1,000s to go into these quarantine hotels. So then I look at that and it's like, so not only do you have to pay for your flights, now you're having to pay for an unexpected, say, $3,000. Let's just say 3,000, 2 to 3,000, but let's say three. Now you've got to pay an additional $3,000 for quarantine for 2 weeks. Most hotels, by the way, $150 a night. That's an average price for a hotel these days. Um, if you think you're gonna go somewhere and get a quarantine hotel for $50 a night, you're out of your fucking mind. Like, you don't get $50 a night accommodations anymore. I mean, most hostels these days will charge you $50 a night. Um, it's really hard even to get Airbnbs for less than $100 a night anymore. Um, and especially, even if you're doing a shared room, you're still going to be spending 75, or shared house. you know, which Chris and I have done back in the day, when we had short layovers. Like we did a layover in Barcelona one time for like 2 or 3 days, and we just ended up we wanted to stay in this particular part of town, and we couldn't find any actual full apartments, but we found a shared we found a room in a shared house, and it was cool. The guy actually lived across the street in the other building with his girlfriend on the same balcony level on the same like third floor or whatever on the other side. So he could, you go out on the balcony and be like, "Hey, what's up, man?" He's, "Hey, what's up?" And he was there every day, But that apartment that he rented out was literally it was 3 rooms, and it was when we were there, there was 2 other couples that were staying there, and we just all cycled out and went and did our own thing, and it was kind of cool, kind of like a hostel sort of weird environment. But even that was still $75 a night, for a shared room. So it's not cheap anymore, and these quarantine hotels are outrageous. So when I see some of my friends who are trying very hard to keep their travel business alive, that's the cost of doing business these days. If you're going to travel, you just have to quarantine these days. You have to have that budget. And Chris and I have looked at that and we said, you know what? We've traveled for a lot of years. We don't need to be traveling right now. Not only that, but it's like, why would we go somewhere and have to? The thought of spending $3,000 on a hotel room makes me sick to my stomach, because that $3,000 would traditionally we would spend that money on exploring the destination. That'd be car rental money, restaurants, and anytime you're going out. So when you have a car in another country, you're getting road trip footage, you're getting drone footage, you're getting any sort of road trip photography you can get. Every time you go to a restaurant, that's photography as well as video content, as well as blog content. Um, so having to spend all of that money on a hotel where you can't go anywhere and you can't do anything and you're stuck in one spot, why? Why would I want to subject myself to that? So the idea of traveling right now makes me just kind of cringe and go, I don't want to travel, at least internationally. I have no desire to travel internationally right now. There was some talk about us potentially going and doing speaking engagements with one of the conferences that we used to work with, but they keep canceling the conferences because it's been 2 years now and they still haven't been able to have not a single event in 2 years, because all of these restrictions keep getting put. And it's no different than what's happening with like the um, music industry. All these artists who haven't been able to tour for like 2 years, and they tried a little bit this year and they got a little window before Omicron kicked off, and now they're not supposed to travel anymore. And so it's like everything's just getting shut down again. So I look at all that and go, thankfully, I have a job that's remote. And even though our our product, my day job started off as a travel-based publication, it has now evolved into a scientific and journalism-based publication that focuses on exploration worldwide. And so it's more about now it's about science and journalism and exploration. So, talking to NASA astronauts and National Geographic photographers and, people from exploratory positions and working in that environment. So it's not really about travel these days. So since I can work remotely, that's a great thing. And with game development, you can do it from home. You don't have to have an office space anymore. So cool. But anyway, yeah, I digress. Watching all the photos of people suffering through travel delays and everything else over the holidays because of the Omicron variant, that sucks. I would not wish that on anybody. So I'm happy that we didn't go anywhere for the holidays. It's just Chris and I hunkered down, and we just played a lot of EverQuest 2 with our community over the last couple of days, which has been fun. I've had a lot of fun. This has been a good holiday season. What else can I talk about? Because I'm 45 minutes in. This is a big episode. I don't know. 2022 for us is, I think it's just going to be, as long as the day job goes good, we're doing another round of investors, January, February, and March. So some of that will dictate what happens for the rest of the year. And I don't know yet, because that's starting at the end of January, going into the next round of investors. It'll be interesting to see what happens with things there. But I know in terms of my own personal space here on YouTube and what we're doing with the Weave in the Void. This right here is going to be pushed big time in 2022. We have big plans for that. Because 2021 was the development and getting everything ready. We launched everything. If you remember, we launched the websites and everything else officially, publicly at the beginning of November. So all this stuff has only been live for 2 months. We had the demo out at the end of October, right at the beginning of November. So the demo's been out for 2 months. We did the playtesting for the source book in August, September. The first part of the book got finished up at the beginning of in November, end of November, and December was Chris getting caught up on artwork and getting the tabletop stuff down here for the miniatures and everything else, so that we can start doing the Etsy store in 2022. So for those of you who follow along with me personally here on YouTube, I know a lot of you tune in for the game content and everything else. I'm still going to be doing that. But you can also expect me, especially in the Discord, this is going to be getting promoted heavily in 2022 because we want to build the Patreon up. We have some dedicated, loyal, hardcore followers who have been supporting us so far, but we're going to be pushing that Patreon hard this year because we want to hire more people, and that requires funding. Now, I could go out and do what I did with Saga Leucemia, which is look for investors. We did pre-order sales with that, which worked, but we also heavily relied on investors and raised a lot of money with investors. I don't want to do that again, at least not at the moment. We don't need to do it with where we're at with this project because we don't need millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a small project like this work. But there does need to be, if we want to hire a full-time or even a part-time, let's just say we want to hire a part-time, a couple of artists to work with us part-time, or an artist plus another developer to help work on the point-and-click game, or to work on other projects within that sphere. We need several $1,000s a month of money coming in from that. And to date, we've paid for everything out of our own pockets, and we're happy to do that. I'm Without getting into details, I'm several $1,000s in personally from 2021 into production on this, and my brother is also several $1,000s. I mean, so we've put a chunk of our own change into this, and of course all of our sweat and equity. But in 2022, we would love to bring on another artist for sure to help Chris out with artwork for the tabletop, and that's one of the goals. If you look at the goals on the Patreon, I think it's at $3,000 a month is what the goal I have it set at right now, is when we hire another artist. And then I think the next tier beyond that is when we get to somebody to come on and work on the point and click game with my brother. If that happens, I'd love to. Why not? I'm 47 minutes in. Getting an artist means we do more art. And specifically, we're looking for a character artist because we need somebody who can, Chris is great at visuals and vistas and stuff, but we need somebody who can actually do character art for elves and dwarves and so on and so forth. So that's something we're pushing for. And then if we get somebody to come work with Joey on the game, doing Unreal development and blueprints and stuff, that's gonna not for the first game. We will still be the first game's already set in stone. We know what we're doing. That's out in 2022. Wink, wink. At some point. But the next game that we want to do is we want to do a traditional RPG, and that requires more than we can't. It can't just be a one. It can be, but we don't want to do it that way. The next project will be an RPG, and for that we need another developer coming on board, preferably someone with programming experience to help us bridge the gap in the skills that we don't have, but somebody who's good with blueprints and has a little bit of programming. And then we'll be working on an RPG for the next title. It'll be the next version of the point and click will just be an enhanced version of that, and we'll be looking more, because like if you look at like King's Quest was very much point and click, no RPG elements in my mind, because you don't have skills that you can level up. It's just quests and missions and stories and things. Quest for Glory added that RPG element because now you had stats, and you could choose between a fighter, mage, and a thief, and vitality mattered, luck mattered, strength mattered, magic points mattered, all that stuff. So we would love to be looking at for the next one. So if you have any interest in those things, then as a supporter of me here on my channel, you should definitely look at the Weave in the Void, because you can pre-order all three of the products through Patreon. The monthly subscriptions You can check out all the tiers, but buried in each one of those tiers is a pre-order for the various projects. Other than the $3 tier, the $3 tier doesn't have any. That just gets you access to the monthly chapters that are published. You get to read those twice a month, and you get to see the artwork from Chris twice a month. Um, and if you don't care about that, then you just wait for the book to come out in a couple of years when it's finished. Um, Otherwise, if you want to read those chapters, that's what the $3 tier is there for. And it's also a great way to just buy us a cup of coffee and say thanks. Because we don't get any money from YouTube. We don't get any money from, all these other places because we're small fish. Um, but the $8 tier, the $15 tier, and the $25 tier all have pre-orders associated with them for the various products that we're developing through that Patreon for the Weave and the Void. And so I would say to everybody, if you like what we're producing, if you like what I'm producing on YouTube and you want to help out, that's a great way is you can just go get a $3 subscription or more over on Patreon. And if you like the content that we're producing between the three of us and you want to help us build this into something bigger and better and help us get an artist on board to work with us full time and another developer to work with us full time, that's what that Patreon is for. And we are going to be pushing that heavily in 2022. Not because we need the money, because my brother has an excavation company and a ranch. I have a day job. So the money that we bring in through Patreon doesn't pay us at all. We haven't taken a single dime of that. All of the money that's coming from Patreon so far is paid for assets from the Unreal store for the point and click game and things like the website and a couple of other things. But we're even beyond that because we're still paying for stuff out of pocket. Um, there's no money being generated through the Patreon right yet. What that money is going towards is asset purchases and business costs. And if it gets to the point where we get a few $1,000s a month coming in, that we will hire an artist, and that's something we would really like to do. And if you want to help us achieve that, and you want to help this project grow, then go over to the Patreon page. Links are down below, but it's the patreon.com/wandering hermits and pony up. But that's just something that on a personal level, Chris and I and my brother are going to be heavily pushing that this year. Not just the Patreon, but also the Etsy store and everything else, because all of that money starts to build up and helps us get to the point where we can bring on a contractor. And of course, now we have affiliate status on Twitch, and the D&D show is something that we're going to be working on very hard this year. My brother and I had a very good talk with Simmer and Nathan Napalm like about 6 months back about what we wanted to do with that project. Um, and assuming that everything works out the way we want, that's going to be transitioning into something even bigger and better. Because right now we're playing Lost Mine of Phandelver, and if you remember my videos here on this channel, the reason we did Lost Mine of Phandelver is so that we could learn 5th edition rules and learn how to use Fantasy Grounds um, properly. So these are training wheels is what these are. Because once we wrap up the Lost Mine of Phandelver, we're getting into this. We're doing the homebrew campaign for Weave and Void, which is what's been being worked on throughout 2021. The source book, the first module, which is Escape from Parthana, which we play tested publicly in August and September. That's all coming down the pipeline. We're going to be streaming these campaigns with this, hopefully with the same crew that's playing Lost Mine of Phandelver right now. Around March or April, we will move into doing this. And once we start doing this, we're going to be heavily promoting that Twitch channel as well, and looking at getting subscribers and everything else, and try to shoot for partner status, because we're trying to build this into something international, with multiple people working on the project, and making it a spectacle show to watch. So um, yeah, that's all I have to say about that. This is I think the longest episode I ever did. This was like 45 minutes. We're approaching an hour right now, so I should probably start to wind down. So as I get to the end of this episode, thanks everybody for a really cool 2021. For helping grow the YouTube channel as much as you have. Next stop is 1,000 subscribers. That's the next goal for this channel, is to get 1,000 subscribers, because once we get that, we get monetization. Monetization isn't necessarily about the money that you get from YouTube. It's mostly about the fact that once your channel is monetized, YouTube starts promoting your videos more than they did before because now there's ads on those videos. And so they go, oh, we're going to help you get those videos out there because we want to generate revenue from those ads. So it does help immensely with the promotion of the material. So I would just as a thank you to everybody who's supported and followed this year. But also, if you like the content that you see here, do me a favor and make sure every time a video comes out, like it, comment it on it, and share it out. If you have a network of people that you think would enjoy the type of content that I produce here on YouTube or the live streams that we do for EverQuest 2 or that other stuff, all that helps. It's a great way to support what I'm doing here on the channel, and eventually we'll get to 1,000, hopefully sooner rather than later. It's been growing pretty good, so I have high hopes. You can all help. Wink, wink. And of course, join the Discord if you haven't already. Bearing in mind that that's very heavily um, leaning towards Weave and Void stuff. We do have our EverQuest 2 community in there, and of course, I have my Renfail's Refuge, which is where I put my personal videos and streaming. But it's mostly, especially in 2022, you're going to start to see a ton more Weave and Void content because we're going to be doing the live streams for miniature painting, the Etsy store, and all that other stuff. And if you have content that you would like to see me cover this year, if you have topics that you would like to see me do, just leave me a suggestion. Ping me on Discord, like send me a PM and say, hey man, what do you think about this? And I'll look into it because I'm always open to content ideas. And no, I don't think I'll be switching to an actual mic boom. I like the headset. I like this. It's not the best audio quality. Some people be like, you should totally go into full streamer. I'm like, I just don't. It's more shit that I have to buy and set up in my office, and I don't need to do that yet. So it's still going to be a headset and mic for the foreseeable future. It is what it is. I'm lazy. All right. I actually need to go get something to eat, everybody, and we're almost an hour in. So thanks for following along. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for doing all the things you do, supporting the channel in all the ways you've done so far. Join our Discord if you haven't already. And again, if you haven't done so, subscribe, follow, all those things. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your 2021 as we head into the official full holiday week before New Year's. And I will see everybody, if not here on YouTube, I will hopefully see you over on the Patreon page for the Weave in the Void stuff for Wandering Hermits and or in Discord. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your 2021. And I'll see you next week, this week coming up with I got some new video content coming out for games and stuff, so stay tuned for that stuff. Peace.